Hello and welcome to Rock Paper Shotgun. Today we are looking at Humankind, the 4X strategy game from Amplitude, coming to PC in 2021. I got to play an early build of this a few weeks ago, as did our resident strategy expert Nate, who joins me now to talk through everything we saw. Annoyingly, we've only got very limited B-roll, so you're going to see some stuff repeat, and a lot of the features we discuss aren't actually shown. But hopefully our chat can fill in the gaps as we explore this, one of the biggest contenders to Civilization's 4X crown. So, Nate, what is Humankind?
Well, they're like these chimps who invented cars. By presuming you're meaning the game coming in 2021 from Amplitude.
I do. I'm well aware of the real Humankind. I want to know about the virtual Humankind.
Well, I guess it's probably easiest to say what it's not. Let's identify the elephant in the room here. Amplitude don't talk about civilization when they talk about Humankind, but I think they should, really. I think they should be brave. They've parked a tank on Sid Meier's lawn, and I think they should acknowledge that, because yeah, it's fair enough. Like, Civilization has been synonymous with so-called 4X games about human history for a long time now, and there's certainly room for a Pepsi to go with that Coke.
Indeed.
And indeed a Dr. Pepper as well, if you consider Old World, which recently came out in early access on Epic.
So we've played the very beginning of the game and the first era, and maybe in describing those, you can kind of maybe sort of set up what the kind of central hook of this one is.
It is set up in some basic ways, like Civ. There are eras. There's the ancient era, obviously, which was the bulk of the build that we played. It ended at the end of the ancient era. But before that, there's the Neolithic as well. Mm-hmm. So the little changes like that. But yeah, by and large, you progress through the eras, and unlike Civ, where you are Romans or whatever for the duration of the game, here you can chop and change. Previous cultures that you've been leave legacy bonuses. You don't just up and change everything, and you accumulate this sort of patchwork of bonuses and specializations and drawbacks over time.
So the big picture sort of pitch for this is that because you have 10 civilizations that you choose from at the start of each new era and 6 eras, it all combines into 1 million different potential civilization combinations by the end of the game.
Yeah, and that is impressive, but yeah, I would say as well, if you've got 10 pairs of socks, 10 t-shirts, 10 pairs of trousers, then you've got 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, you got loads, like millions of different outfits as well, but they're all essentially going to be socks, t-shirt and trousers. So I'm not too sceptical on it, but I've only played, obviously, one era, so I don't know how wildly different things are going to be. It may be that you're stacking up some slightly different perks as the eras go on. It might radically change your game style, and I would like to give it the benefit of the doubt and say the latter's feasible. Because if there's one thing that really struck me about Humankind, the developers said this as well, they really want you to be able to play it exactly how you want to play it.
What kind of stuff are you actually doing in that era you've played then? Sort of break down kind of what you were focusing on.
Okay, so actually, let's go back to the Neolithic. Well, not literally, otherwise this would be a really exciting time travel video. But let's talk about it, because that is a really good example of the versatility at work. So in my first playthrough, I got out of the Neolithic really quickly, because I assumed you want to progress as fast as you can, right? That's what you do in 4X games. And there were two ways out. You could either accumulate knowledge or food, until you had, your knowledge presumably. You just scratch your head until one day you decided to invent agriculture. The food, you just eat loads of horses and stuff until you've got enough kids that your house is a city. So there's two ways out. The first time I decided to absolutely beeline racing to get little points of interest on the map to advance my knowledge. And I think I had, my founding capital of the ancient era on like turn 2 or something. So you can get out really quickly. But the second time I played, I thought, well, let's just see how long I can stay at this party, this caveman party. And quite a long time, actually, because my brutes were roaming all over the map and getting food. And as they got food, they multiplied. And we'll talk about the battles in a bit, but your roving armies are unit stacks of a sort. Mm-hmm. And as my nomads feasted, their stack grew, and I could start budding it off into smaller groups of nomads that I also sent out. And when eventually I decided it was time to go to the ancient era, I had this sort of replicating von Neumann swarm of cavemen all over the continent who all leveled up into scouts when I hit the ancient era and put me... obviously I had put myself at a bit of a disadvantage by going so long without a capital, but I had counterweighted that and mitigated it by getting all of these units all over the place who could then spy out landmarks and claim territory and stuff like that. And talking to the devs as well, they think you can push it even longer. Apparently you can have meaningful, beneficial play in the Neolithic, like 16 turns into the game.
And once you did get into the ancient era, which civilization did you pick?
So I was the Babylonians, who are a science-focused culture. Again, to Civ fans, no surprises in terms of the sort of base competencies and the resources and stuff. There is science or research, and you have Civs who are good at that, like the Babylonians. There's industry. The Egyptians, who you played as them, didn't you?
Yeah, very good, very industrious. The second game I played as the Egyptians, and like the growth of the city was noticeably faster, noticeably easier. I don't know if that's just because I had my head around what was going on in the game, because I think I played as the Babylonians in the first game. But yeah, it seemed slightly different. I mean, actually, can you sort of talk a bit about the kind of the city building and maybe like how that sort of differs from Civ?
Yeah, I love the city building in Humankind. It was one of the first things they showed off about the game after it was announced, and I think it's a real winner. It's comparable to Civilization 6's district system, where your city occupies more than just one hex on the map. Only in Civ 6, you could put your districts anywhere within a certain radius around a city, and it's sort of got to be a bit like a Tetris game, with you seeing where you could squeeze things in order to get adjacency bonuses and stuff like that. So in Humankind, yeah, there's a bit of that. There's all sorts of buildings you can build which don't appear on the map and do things like increase adjacency bonuses for districts.
Yeah, they're sort of infrastructures, I think they called them.
Yeah, I think so. And of course they're not districts in this, they're quarters. It's funny how everything has a slightly different term from the one used in Civ. But yes, you've got two categories. You've got quarters, which you put on a hex, and then you've got your infrastructures, which provide bonuses to everything. And the difference from Civ 6 is you don't just plonk things down within the city's region of influence. You build out adjacent from it. So obviously your first quarter, you can put in any of the tiles touching your city. But if you want to, you can just keep going in one direction. Like I built a city that was like a really cool worm along the side of the sea. I really liked that.
Yeah, well, I thought one of the things that really struck me was actually when we were talking to the developers after the demo, they were talking about how a lot of the building strategy comes into play with later cultures and the kind of sort of synergies between them. So, one example they gave was a very early culture, the Harappan, are very big on canals and exploiting waterways. So in their own era, they get a lot of benefits from that. But then if later in the game, in Era 3, if you've then picked the culture, the Khmer, which is the sort of the predecessor to modern Cambodia, they also get big bonuses from commerce or rivers. So civilizations that are built to benefit from something early on can then echo down the line if you pick the right culture.
And I think that's where the versatility becomes really exciting, right? Because that sort of canal dynamo you've just mentioned won't necessarily be useful to you in every map start you find yourself in. Or I hope it's not going to be the case that there are certain killer recipes for civilizations that form a sort of a meta. I get the feeling, again, it's going to be circumstantial, so you will pick the blend that works for the situation you're in.
And I guess something else that sort of semi-factors into that flexibility of approach is how it actually deals with victory. And the victory state you're working towards in the game is pursuit of fame, which is fed into by everything.
In Civ, historically, you've had several routes to victory. You've got the science victory, where you build a big spaceship at the end. You've got the conquest victory, where you just smash everyone's bones into dust. Yeah, they've experimented with different ones. Diplomacy victories, where you get everyone to say they're your best mate at the UN, religious victories, where you get everyone following your religion, etc., etc. Really, over the years, people have mostly played conquest and science victories, or at least I have. But there's none of that in Humankind, right? There's just fame, which, if we're being honest, is points. It's a high score rush. I like the way it's set up. There are several ways, many ways you can get fame. So if you've played the Civ 6 first expansion, Rise and Fall, the fame system's actually kind of reminiscent of that. So in Rise and Fall, for each era, you could get good boy points for doing really civilization-y things, like circumnavigating the globe or inventing the dog. And if you had enough of those good boy points at the end of the era, you would enter a golden era for your next one, where your Civ would be sort of better and you'd get perk picks and things. So this is kind of similar. Those landmarks, like building a certain wonder or being the first to find some really cool mountain, they get you these fame points and put you in competition with Civs globally. And of course you can get fame by being a mega tyrant who crushes stuff, or by inventing loads of things. So, stuff like the science victory and the conquest victory are still viable in terms of what you would do to accomplish them. But it's nice because you're no longer having to say at the start of the game, right, okay, I'm going to be these people, I'm going to go for a science victory, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do. You look at the map, you look who's around you, you look what your opportunities are, and say, well, how am I going to get fame? You're not going in with a set plan that you have to stick to. You can kind of let your whims take you a bit more, and you can be more adaptive.
I thought one of the other interesting things is that when you change era, you can choose to stick with your current civilization or your current culture and transcend it. The benefit being that you get I think, quite a substantial boost to your fame in the next realm, because in the next era, because you're carrying across the kind of momentum you've built up. But the obvious disadvantage is that you don't then get the second legacy perk of a new culture. You don't get the more advanced military tech, and so you'll kind of fall behind other cultures moving through the eras. Apparently you can transcend all through the game and take one ancient era culture from start to finish.
See, I love that. As soon as I get it, I am going to make Space Egyptians and just live my Necron dream. It's going to be great.
You mentioned religion there very briefly. One thing I thought was quite interesting in the demo was how it deals with the sort of transference of ideas and development of ideas, because it has a sort of civic system where you'll hit certain milestones and then it will raise certain questions about how you want your society to be run. So, for example, I think when you develop 5 military units, it asks you if you want your military to conscript people or be training a professional army, and how this will change basically how your culture's perceived, but also neighbouring cultures can have an impact, like a rival ideology can bleed in, or your people can look to a neighbouring culture and, I guess, grow jealous of it and start asking you to enact changes to how you're running yours. And so there is this sort of bleed of ideas, not just between the eras, but between neighbouring cultures.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Actually really brings to mind the way that religion has been treated in later Civ games as not something that it's something that's founded by your civilization, but it's not uniquely applicable to your civilization. It's an independent set of bonuses and stuff that can apply to anywhere that religion is believed. And I think Humankind takes that sort of principle and runs with it.
It seems to be presented as a bigger focus on kind of emergent storytelling, because these events, they're almost presented as like big narrative decisions. You know, it's like, your people have heard of this and they want this, you know, how are you going to answer them? And
yeah, and also I ought to give another shout out to Old World here. If you like that system, Old World absolutely smashes it. Yeah, those narrative moments, you're absolutely right, great for storytelling. And I think it's another clever bit of borrowing that Amplitude have done, because they've sort of run around the entire strategy market like contestants in Supermarket Sweep, with Dale Winton bellowing at them to get features. And this actually really reminds me of Paradox games, because that was always the best moments in Crusader Kings 2 and also in Europa Universalis were those decision points, and it really felt like that. The other thing, of course, they've taken, but that are reminiscent of Paradox Grand Strategy games are the civics we mentioned, where, for example, your policy changes or policy decisions will move your culture on axes like like individualism or collectivism. I can't remember what they are, but there's those sort of sliding scales between two opposing ideologies, and as you move on those scales, things like the cost of certain units or whatever will either increase or decrease depending on which direction you're moving in. And that was always a really satisfying Paradox thing, and it's great to see it in Humankind.
Particularly like the idea that your people will be happier with military aggression in neighbouring regions if you are more different from them. Like, the closer you are politically, the more damaging that's going to be for you, or the harder or the less pleasing it will be to see you kind of go and ransack their territory.
Oh yeah, can we just talk about ransacking briefly?
Yeah.
It's I love ransacking.
Yeah.
When you've got soldiers running around, you're on an enemy or another civilization's outpost, you can just click on ransack and they'll do that. I just like the name, really. Whenever we get a curry, I always say I'm going to ransack a dansack, even if I don't then go on to order a dansack.
That's a beautiful insight into your everyday life.
Well, I don't eat curry every day. I'd burst, but I wish.
Yes, neither do I. You mentioned ransacking there. Did you get to do much battling? Annoyingly, something that isn't in our B-roll. I guess they're waiting to show this off at a later time. But did you do many of the fights?
Yeah, I did. I mean, the cultures I chose weren't very fightsome. But I did get to try it out. Basically, it's a sort of best of both worlds approach to the two different ways that civilization has treated army movement historically. So you do make unit stacks, as in Civs 1 to 4, where you have multiple units in an army on the same tile. Well, and indeed, you could form armies in Civ 6 in the end, and I think Civ 5. But yeah, you've got these armies that move around, but they're not these sort of doom stacks that just smash into each other when there's a fight. When two armies collide, and this is really cool, it sections off a number of hexes from the world map. It instances it, basically.
Right.
And the rest of the world ceases to matter. And then it becomes this strange turn-based tactics game where the progression of years pauses. And I think the previous Endless games invented this. So I don't know how similar it is to them, but certainly the way it works in Humankind, the outside progression of time stops, and you line up your units and have this turn-based battle where terrain matters. And yeah, it's strange because it's part of this section of the continent suddenly sort of also doubles up as what feels like a much smaller area. It's a neat abstraction. It is utterly ridiculous when you send your hunters to hunt some deer and have to line them up in a pitched field battle with some ungulates where the deer sort of position their troops and then charge around trying to gore you with their antlers. That doesn't work for me. But other than that, I think it's pretty cool.
I think we're painting a picture of a game which feels like it's probably going to come into its own more as we get into those later eras, or that the interplay between the eras is what's going to defy Humankind. Trying to judge it from this demo is quite hard. I'm not huge into 4X games, but I found this pretty accessible. I think they've streamlined like the interface in very neat ways, and you can just see from this footage it's pretty gorgeous. Like there's loads of beautiful incidental details. So you've got like the giant battle deer that you fight on the map, but then you've also got like tiny little deer kind of flocking around lakes and stuff. There's just lots of incidental stuff. When you see the screenshots of later eras where you've got landmarks from your past cultures sitting alongside your new cultures, it begins to really tell this visual story of what you've done, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's a game about leaving your mark on the world, isn't it? And I think persistence of things through the game, not just in the choices you make in your civilization, but literally on the map as well, visually, is a big theme. That's where a huge amount of satisfaction can come from in these things. So yeah, it's a smart call. Maybe
hard to say where it stands in the Pepsi-Coke battle at this current point.
It could be Pepsi Max Cherry, the emperor of drinks. But it could be Pepsi Clear, or whatever it was. But I can't even remember the name of because it got binned in the 80s.
Here's hoping it won't be, and you'll actually get a chance to see this for yourself as well if you sign up for its open dev system, which is basically allowing people to play smaller builds of the game in the run-up to 2021 release. Thank you, Nate, for talking through Humankind with us.
No, you're welcome. I really can't wait to play.
And if you enjoyed this video, please do check out our other strategy game breakdowns we've done recently. We've done Crusader Kings 3, we've looked at Total War Troy, and please do subscribe to Rock Paper Shotgun for more like this. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Bye for now.